Greetings, beautiful friends and fellow students of Japanese art. Today, let's talk about no-face, kaonashi, and a new theory that I think you all are really going to like. And let's also think more about how artists are really good at bringing to expression repressed parts of whole communities. They spend a lot of time in the dark, and their eyes adjust and become sensitive to patterns and agencies hiding in the margins. They envision monsters. And No-Face is really a blobby, genderqueer drag clown made from spectral black goo and other important Japanese symbols. This abjection incarnating phantom wears a mask inspired by No theater and a body inspired by silkworms and bunraku puppeteers, and this makes him a repository, or complex hieroglyph indexing Japanese art's silk history and the possibility for transformation. The purple hairband comes from threads that No-Face spun. And silkworms are also historically tied to women. So he's symbolic of a lost past, a fading culture. Layered like a musical chord, these higher notes are rooted by a bass note of repressed post-war Japanese anxieties. The faceless demon becomes possessed by a rampaging, insecure, greedy child embodying U.S. imperialism and, as Ayumi Suzuki puts it, the nightmare of capitalism. People run from No-Face like he's Godzilla, and in both we see echoes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's also echoes of Butoh masks, characterized by their mime-like, surrealist, frozen screams, and No-Face's subtle gestures recall the spooky performances of Kazuo Ono. This layered character externalizes cultural anxieties as well as repressed stages of personal growth. His big mouth and disgusting scatological body point to oral and anal stages, more overtones and harmonies. Yet I think No-Face goes back even further, to the time before time, to Chihiro's placental ghost, or what analysts might call her placental programming. Probing our own relationship to this long-lost sibling shines a new light onto No-Face and his gift, as well as on any schism he's attempting to heal. Can you even imagine meeting your own adult-sized, long-lost womb mate today? Could you recognize them? Would you embrace them or run away in terror? When the cord is cut, we're separated not from our mothers, but from our placentas. So we all have mother, father, and placenta complexes, explored directly in postnatal psychologies and expressed indirectly through surrealist fiction like Spirited Away. Reading philosopher Peter Sloterdijk's commentary on placentas in his chapter in Bubbles, Requiem for a Discarded Organ, these suspicions about No-Face seem well-founded. Quote, "A first amorphous other has appeared, with neither eyes nor voice. Like an intrauterine butler, it stays close and on the fringe discreet and nourishing. An archaic, unpopular organ whose task is to make itself available to the fetal pre-subject as a partner in the dark. It is like a dark little brother placed by our side so that the fetal night would not be too lonely." All of which is to say, everyone's a little bit bipersonal. Central to this thesis is the fact that No-Face and Chihiro are attuned from the beginning. The scene most crucial to understanding this is when they first meet on the bridge. Both are invisible to the other characters. Is No-Face holding his breath too? Yet, they can see each other, acknowledging one another with a little bow and head turn. Incidental Mythology on YouTube does a great deep dive into this scene as well. Why can No-Face see Chihiro on the bridge? He's pulled into the story the moment she enters the threshold. Chihiro conjures him somehow, or is it the other way around? Also, we find out both are unwanted others, lost, in the world but not of it, searching for family. And this leads Ghibli scholars to wonder if No-Face is Chihiro's animus, sub-self, id, other-self, shadow, existential sense of isolation and abandonment, and co-star Hulk with a hug, best friend trope. Another clue Spirited Away centers on Chihiro and No-Face is his connection to the shite, or main character in No theater, the spirit who always meets you on a bridge. We encounter No-Face on a bridge twice, at night and during the day, further associating him with liminal spaces and threshold guardians. We should remember that his original name is Kaonashi, and the No theater mask and No in his English name are just a coincidence, a sort of magical synchronicity. Hieroglyphs always seem to have this funny, punning, and euphemistic quality. An essential phenomenon of every birth, the placenta or bundle of life is still full of mysteries, and it used to be received with great esteem and even religious awe. In pre-industrial cultures, people taught their kids about it, and everyone grew up knowing where their twin was, where it was buried. They could psychically integrate its presence because placentas were honored and personal and sacred. Hospitals today label them toxic waste and sell them off immediately. The child never hears of their womb mate again, and this relatively new cross-cultural placenta-denying attitude influences us deeply. Our separate self sense and our sense of togetherness, establishing, according to Peter Sloterdijk, quote, an imaginary solitary confinement of individuals in the womb, end quote. So these placenta-honoring rituals actually became anxiety-releasing mechanisms, according to anthropologists. And they operate all over the world to counter narcissism. In The Shadow of Life, J.R. Davidson says that these rituals delimit a portion of reality and are essential to our well-being. So, at an unconscious or subconscious level, Chihiro and everyone else is anxious because she doesn't know where her placenta is. Her parents didn't practice the ancient Japanese custom of burying it with gifts in a clay pot under the house. And even if they did, they're all moving. Everyone has been unmoored from the world of the known. No-Face is a personification of the missing placenta for a few other reasons. He wants to nourish Chihiro, protect her, give her anything she needs. And when separated, he calls out to her. He even aggressively seeks her out. And Y.W. Loke, in Life's Vital Link, points out that compared to other mammals, the human placenta is the most intrusive to the mother, even destroying her blood vessels in its quest to obtain the optimum supply of nutrients for the baby. It's a kind of aggressive behavior usually only associated with cancer. Side note, even though he's genderqueer, taking on both masculine and feminine voices, and No-Face's mask and body are very androgynous, he goes by he-him pronoun, which might mean something. Jungian psychology asserts that every body has an opposite-sexed soul, anima, animus, similar to yin-yang, so that we are all bi-gender. Yet, Plato and Hedwig's Origins of Love perfectly refute this. There are 3 or more types of spiritual pairings, but the point is that No-Face would probably do anything for Chihiro, just like a life partner. We all grow into this world right next to a purple partner made just for us, who sleeps with us, wakes with us, and follows us out of the bathhouse, only to suddenly vanish and be replaced by a comfort object. And in light of this, our childhood fascinations with stuffed animals and blankies makes an expanded kind of sense. It's not just an adaptation to the trauma of physical separation from the mother, who might actually be more like a hyperobject to the fetus or an ever-present but invisible environment. No, it's responding to the physical separation from the first legible other self we ever meet. The primal companion. Our imaginary friend. Ultrasounds at 5 months reveal fetuses petting it, for lack of a better term. And when we curl up with a blanket and pillow at night, we learn more about this pre-personal friendship than if we were to study it with a microscope or supernatural cosmology. Sloterdijk again says, quote, as soon as we prepare for the night, we almost always slide into a state in which we cannot help disposing ourselves towards a self-augmentation in the dark, in which an appropriate with successor will play its part, end quote. Sloterdijk calls the placenta the with. Interestingly, beds, bedding, bedrooms, and pillows are all enlarged and play an important role in Spirited Away, and I can't stop thinking about how Kamaji turns a pillow into a blanket for Chihiro when she falls asleep on the floor. Some pharaohs apparently mummified their secret helpers, believing the placenta plays a protective role inside as well as outside the womb. The 3,000-year-old Narmer palette depicts a person carrying the royal placenta in front of the pharaoh like it's a flag. Also, check out Hildegard of Bingen, the 12th century mystic and polymath. Her painting, The Creation of the Soul, depicts a diamond-shaped entity full of eyes connected to the fetus through a golden cord. According to Egyptologist Award Blackman, quote, when in one aspect the placenta ghost is a protecting genius, in the other it is the force that controls and suggests a person's thoughts and actions. In short, in the latter aspect, it is his personality, end quote. And scientists have just published about how the size and weight of the placenta does, in fact, have an effect on the child's mental health later in life. Also, doctors always examine the placenta for signs of disease, especially if the child is sick. Placentas reveal secrets. They may have no face, but they'll still tell on you. And women who smoke or drink lots of soda give birth to blackened placentas, as do women who live near toxic wastelands. As a placenta ghost, No Face, therefore, protects and reflects, like a toxicology report. He makes visible the invisible parts of the person and the community. No Face is the placenta of the post-war Japanese psyche. And we can add him to a long history of human placenta images. In the film, he's sometimes animated to look like a dark, veiny, blobby pancake, but we read on Ghibli Wiki that he was designed after a silkworm, which is interesting when we consider the role a silkworm's cocoon plays in the metamorphosis of the adult. The larva must turn to goop and be incorporated by the future self who has not yet emerged. Silkworms also have eye spots or false faces, which are like masks, used to confuse predators. He is, therefore, Chihiro's gooey cocoon protector and larval stage, her future and her past, providing her with whatever she needs to get the hell out of the bathhouse. I think it's also interesting to note that modern domesticated silkworms have lost many of the capacities of their wild cousins, relying on direct human intervention to feed and breed, just as No Face demonstrates total plasticity and transforms as soon as he enters the bathhouse. I asked artist and paleontologist Michael Garfield about this pattern, and he made a really interesting connection. He says, quote, "As with many other organisms shaped by their dependency on the human world and its built environments, No Face undergoes a profound transformation in size, affect, and the ability to exert his own agency. Ultimately, he needs Chihiro as much as she needs him. Incapable of executive function, he becomes an oracle of the bathhouse's plutonic forces until Chihiro reclaims her non-human shadow self and tames the chthonic forces of an unconscious mind bent into service of the economy. Sound familiar?" End quote. Analysts also think the missing placenta plays a critical role in the development of our contemporary capitalist, isolated and isolating narcissism. Sloterdijk claims our modern individualism could only enter its intense phase in the second half of the 18th century, when the general clinical and cultural excommunication of the placenta began. He explains that when we carelessly discard our primal companion, demons take its place. Where, on the other hand, as in antiquity and popular traditions, a space was left open for the soul's double in the cultural imaginary, people could, up into the threshold of modernity, assure themselves that they were, quote, not directly connected either to their mother, society, or their own people. Rather, they remained primarily connected throughout their lives to an innermost second, the true ally and genius of their particular existence, end quote. And I think this excision of our innermost second from our lives may be the initial lack from which all other lacks eventually follow. The gaping hole left in our psyche is the dark void out of which the ego builds its isolating case. There is a cross-cultural belief that failure to treat the placenta with special consideration decenters human beings. In Japan, this is why the second birth was placed in a clay jar and buried under the house. And if the child was female, a needle and thread was buried with the placenta, which further connects it to No Face, who finds his purpose when given a needle and thread. His silkworm-inspired body connects to the threads in the purple hairband for a marvelous, magical moment of correspondence. Also in Japan, part of the placenta was dried and kept as the child's personal medicine, resonating with the healing emetic Chihiro feeds No Face to help him purge. The point is that whatever was buried with the placenta influenced the life of its other half. So people created special reliquaries, or they wrapped it up like a present and buried it under fruit trees. People still do this. In some cases, as we see with the beaded turtles and lizards in Lakota umbilical cord bundles, it becomes part of the child's first toy, a talisman carried with them their entire lives and buried or cremated with them at death. According to Ghibli Wiki, quote, "The hairband is a protective talisman. Chihiro continues to wear the hairband after she has left the spirit realm through the Red Gate. The hairband makes it clear that her experiences in the spirit realm must have been more than just a dream." End quote. I rest my case. We are all haunted by a No Face. And through this fantastical hieroglyphic language, Miyazaki hints that the secret to a human incarnation is a shadowy blobworm and carnivalesque disruption of order that delivers a message from your missing soul double. by recognizing what we've lost, this monster can transform into what chaos magicians call your holy guardian angel, the negative space, in which we can fully flower, individuate, and finally reconstitute our wholeness. Meanwhile, we surround ourselves with cords and hold close our comfort objects.